Colorado, and going to be talking about having fun with VHF, mostly portable operating, summits on the air, that sort of thing. A little bit about VHF contests, and I live in Monument, Colorado, but I grew up in the Midwest. So I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, just over the state line. For most of you guys, or all you guys, was first licensed in 77. I was down at Purdue University, and go Boilers. Sorry, there's probably some Ohio State fans in the crowd. We'll just have to deal with that. Uh, I've gotten used to it now because my daughter went to University of Michigan, so got to set those Big Ten rivalries aside. So I uh, took a ham radio class there at Purdue, and ham radio has been my hobby ever since. I'm an electrical engineer by background, and I like lots of stuff with ham radio, but lately in the last I'd say 5 years, it's always been kind of this VHF mountains exploring, and that fits well with summits on the air. Just discovered parks on the air recently, and I like to write stuff. So some of the material I'm talking about is out of my book, VHF Summits and More, but not exclusively tonight. And really, I want to talk about three main things. A little bit about VHF basics. I see we got some newer call signs in the mix in the audience tonight. And then talk about VHF contests a bit and summits on the air. So to get the terminology right, what is VHF? Well, by definition, it's 30 to 300 megahertz. I noticed that when I talk about VHF, I often get kind of sloppy, and I really just mean anything above 50 megahertz. So I'll kind of throw UHF in without thinking about it too much, and just call it VHF. The two most popular bands, of course, are 6 meters, so 50 megahertz, 2 meters, 144, and then 70 centimeters. Lots of people start out with the with an HT, right? Ham shack in your hand. We call them handy talkies or handheld transceivers. The cool thing, it's affordable, compact, everything's ready to go. Typically covers 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and but low power, 5 watts. And the three best ways to improve your HT is antenna, antenna, antenna. I guess that's sort of a ham radio principle in general, right? Antennas are really a big deal. We'll talk a bit about different antennas. I'm not going to really talk about repeaters too much because people seem to understand those pretty well. And I'll try and hit those other topics. Now, if you have your handheld radio, it's kind of a basic radio. Next step up is what I would call like a basic VHF station. So you get your DC power supply, plug it into the wall. It provides 12 volts to a mobile radio, and hook that up to a vertical antenna. Typically, maybe put that on the top of your house, that sort of thing. That's a pretty capable basic VHF station, at least for FM, because those mobile transceivers are typically just FM only. But you can do a lot of fun stuff with that. And then, does any of you guys operate 2 meter sideband or any of the other VHF sideband modes? I see a thumbs up from Anthony. Jim. Yeah, I can't see everybody. Okay, so some. And you'll tend to notice that the more serious VHF guys tend to gravitate to single sideband and CW, and for good reason. Single sideband has much better performance than FM, particularly when the signals get weak. When the signal's starting to fade, FM has sort of this phenomena of it gets noisy and then all of a sudden they're gone. Whereas single sideband will kind of keep on going and get noisier and noisier and gradually fade. You can do much better. Same with, even more so with CW. The calling frequency for single sideband is 144/200, and that's going to be upper sideband. Typically, the activity over there uses horizontal antennas, and I don't know what it's quite like in your area. I bet it's pretty similar. The problem with single sideband is a lot of times you get on the air and all you hear is static. You know, it's like there's nobody there, and and so I always think about, you know, how do you find activity on 2 meters? And the two places I look to are nets, because if there's a net going on, then there's probably somebody there, and then contests. And that's really why I like the VHF contests. Is they're, to me, they're activity weekends. They're just a good chance to get on the air and make some contacts. So we'll talk about those a bit. Used to be, you could, there was a whole bunch of different radios you could buy for let's just say 2 meter all mode, single sideband SSB, and that's really faded. In fact, there's really only one all mode VHF UHF transceiver right now. It's the IC 9700, and it's a pretty sweet radio. It's the same size as the IC 7300, the HF rig. Seems like lots of people are buying those radios. This radio has 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 23 centimeters, or 1.2 gigahertz. I've got one of these, pretty nice radio. Not real cheap. It's a pricey radio. Last time I looked, they're about $1,500. So it's going to be the kind of radio the more serious VHF, UHF guys are gonna get. The other way to get on 2 meter all mode is the do everything transceivers. And these are HF through UHF. They do all the modes. Good example, I have this radio, an FT991. I guess they have the A version now. Yeah. Covers HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, about $1,200. ICOM has the IC 7100. Yaesu's got the 857. That's more of a mobile style radio. And that's another way to get on VHF with all modes. There's a bunch of pretty cool QRP transceivers out there. And again, I'm looking at it from a VHF point of view. So kind of the classic for many years has been the Yaesu FT817, and then they recently modified that to be the 818. Slight upgrade from the 817. And then Elecraft, like if you hang around with any of the QRP guys, they're usually pretty excited about like the KX3 or the KX2. The KX3, you can get a 2 meter option for it, but it doesn't have 70 centimeters. And then a lot of people are going gaga over this ICOM IC 705. Recently started shipping, and it's got HF through UHF. I think it runs 10 watts on all those bands. So lots of interesting radios out there. Antennas are always important. You know, if you're operating 6 meters, and I'm thinking maybe portable operating here, even a wire dipole does pretty well. And in fact, you can use any of the wire antennas that people use, the same kind of design they use on HF, just make it shorter for 6 meters. So like the end-fed half wave is pretty popular with the Summits on the Air folks. Or, you know, if you want something more serious, then it's usually move up to a Yagi antenna of some sort. And then 2 meters and up, you know, the single sideband activity is going to tend to use a beam antenna, and it's typically going to be a Yagi. Again, horizontally polarized for weak signal work. Polarization is important. So, you know, if you're running FM or DMR or D-Star, any of the, it's kind of the mobile oriented modes, those are all vertically polarized, and that's just the convention. It's naturally omnidirectional, convenient for handheld radios, mobiles, bases. It's kind of the way to go. And then, as I said, for kind of the weak signal stuff, including WSJT, people tend to use horizontal polarization. And you can go omnidirectional and still be horizontally polarized. There are some antennas that do that. I'd say a typical installation is like a Yagi with maybe 8 dB D, so of gain, 8 dB better than a dipole. Of course, that's going to take you into, I need to be able to rotate the antenna, right? So whether it could be an Armstrong rotator, do it by hand, but more likely, some kind of rotor to. Here's some common vertical antennas. Diamond X50. I've got one of those. Really nice antenna. Arrow makes a ground plane antenna for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Pretty affordable. It's only $50. A lot of people run these J poles, whether they buy one or a lot of construction projects out there that you can build yourself. I did want to put in a plug for the mag mount antenna. Of course, we usually think of that as for a car, which is true. They really, like, if you're driving around the HT in a car, you're inside a shielded cage usually with most vehicles. So getting the antenna outside really helps, and a mag mount's an easy way to do that. But it also is kind of a flexible approach. Like here's this photo came from Steve, KC2 Sierra Papa. He actually put a piece of sheet metal up in his attic, and he put a mag mount antenna on top of that and used it as a magnetic antenna, and as an attic antenna, sorry. And of course, you look around and you see these mag mounts used almost anywhere, like sticking on a filing cabinet, sticking on top of a refrigerator, or really any hunk of metal, as long as it's magnetic material, right? It has to be steel, can't be aluminum. So anyway, the whole mag mount thing is a really handy antenna to have. You can plop it down lots of different places. Of course, it's vertically polarized. So back to horizontal antennas. Here's an omnidirectional, a loop. There are a variety of different sizes here. This one, actually, all three of these antennas are from M Squared. I've got a bunch of their antennas. They seem to make really good stuff. So 2 meter loop. Or here's a small Yagi, 4-element Yagi, not real big, but 9.6 dBi gain. Here's a bit longer one, 9 elements long. I think the boom on that's probably 12 to 14 feet, something like that. So now you're getting into a little bit larger antenna, and of course you keep, the gain number keeps going up at the bigger antenna. All Yagi designs. I want to say a little bit about propagation, particularly with like when I'm talking to people about doing summits on the air, they always get stuck on this idea that VHF only goes line of sight. It's and that's kind of what we've taught people, right? We say HF has this cool thing about skywave propagation and ionosphere.
Lincoln did invest in newspapers as a vehicle for promoting himself. No one has ever found a copy of that paper, by the way.
Maybe somebody's unmuted. So clearly the HF has the skywave propagation, ionosphere, F layer, all that good stuff. And so we've taught people that VHF just goes to the horizon. And here's kind of the line of sight model. It's like, okay, the signal goes to the optical horizon, and then we say, that's as far as you can see. And then we say, well, it goes a little further. It goes out to the radio horizon. Rule of thumb has always been like 15% more, something like that. So this becomes kind of the line of sight region. Well, what happens after that is the signal doesn't magically stop. It keeps on going. So I called that the non-line of sight region. And the little dashed arrows here indicate that the signal is going to get weaker out here. That's the main thing. It's not nearly as strong when you're close in, but it still keeps going, and that's what is part of the excitement of VHF. Is that okay? How can I make use of those weaker signals? We have a similar thing with mountains where you think maybe if I transmit in a mountain's in the way, it's just going to stop. Well, actually, the signal keeps going. It's just a lot weaker on the other side of the mountain. The other thing with mountains is there's all these valleys and stuff, so you may reflect off of some other peak, and the signal may sort of bounce its way down a canyon or whatever, and it's always kind of fun just to see what's possible when you think there's no clear path to the other station. The signal may find a way. You just never know. Yeah, and then back to skywave propagation. We do get some skywave on VHF. The most common is sporadic E, and it's pretty exciting. Most common during the summer, and I'd say it occurs frequently on 6 meters during the summer, and then occurs less frequently on 2 meters, and doesn't go much higher than that. It's called sporadic E because it tends to be sporadic. These clouds of ionization form kind of randomly, and you can be sitting there on 6 meters and the band is completely dead, and all of a sudden the clouds start forming correctly, and you're working across North America without much trouble at all. And then it's always fascinating to watch how the propagation shifts. It may be really strong into Florida for us, maybe strong into Florida for a while, and then move on up to the Midwest, and then it moves, maybe down to Texas or whatever. Then there is F layer propagation. There's lots of discussion of the sunspot cycle. We've entered the new cycle, right? And so the sunspot activity is increasing. And if we get a lot of intensity, you can have F layer propagation with 6 meters. And so 6 meters starts to behave like 10, the high HF bands when things are really good. It may take us a few years to get there, but hopefully we can get some of that. And people do call 6 meters the magic band. I think it's because, on any given day, it tends to be propagation is kind of like 2 meters. It's kind of local. And then all of a sudden sporadic E turns on and you can work across North America. The calling frequency is 50.125, and then you move up from there as the band gets busy. And during the summer, it can get really busy. Like people will be working all the way up to like 50.250. And then the DX window is below that, from 50.110 to 50.125 is the DX window. And so that's intended to be reserved for contacts outside of North America. Well, let's say outside the continental US. And then somebody was talking about FT8 before we started here today. And if you've been on HF lately, you probably have discovered this trend towards FT8. You can really do a lot of good things when conditions are not that great. And that's happening on 6 meters as well. It's gotten very, very popular. And because it can compensate for poor propagation, people are making contacts on 6 meters that they never thought possible. With kind of a modest station, I've worked Japan on 6 meters using FT8, and I've worked into Europe, and that's becoming pretty common. Not an everyday occurrence, but happens frequently. Okay, so that's a little bit of VHF background. Let's click over to VHF contests. And I always think of VHF contests as activity weekend. yeah, there's definitely the contest activity is fun, but but I think the main idea for me is it's just it generates activity. And so most VHF contests use all the bands above 50 megahertz. Um, scoring is based on the Maidenhead grid systems. We'll talk about that just a bit. It's both basically how many the score is number of contacts you made multiplied times the number of grids that you worked. This is where single sideband is used a lot. Also, a lot of CW. You work a lot of stations on CW, some on FM, and then there's this whole FT8 trend that a lot of the contest activity on 6 meters has moved to FT8, and they just last year introduced FT4, which is it's basically the same thing as FT8. It's just twice as fast in terms of the timing sequence, and it was created to help with contests because people said FT8 was still a little bit slow for contesting. They want to make more contacts faster. Most common, most popular bands are 50 megahertz, 144, and 432. And you can work everybody you can on every band. So if you work somebody on all 3 bands, you get more points that way. You'd have to look at the contest rules to see the exact scoring, but that's, basically it's QSO points times number of grids worked. So obviously you want to work lots of grids. Which brings us to the Maidenhead grid system, right? The whole world is divided up into 1 degree of latitude by 2 degrees of longitude. And we have a 4-character designator for each one of those rectangles. Here is the highest level. This is the bigger blocks, like I'm in the DM block out here in Colorado. You guys are in the EN Echo November block. And like if I drill down into Colorado, this is what the grids look like. I'm here in DM 79, just to the south of me is DM 78, and we've got about 16 grids that cover the state. Went ahead and looked up Cuyahoga Falls. You're in Echo November 91, and so that's the grid locator there. It sticks out into Lake Erie a pretty good chunk. And then I don't know if any of you guys live further south there. So the next grid south, I guess, would be Echo November 91, right? Or 90 rather. And for VHF operating, you really want to know what grid you're in. It's kind of a standard thing to know, and it's showing up on the HF bands as well, right? Like a lot of the contests and awards are using the grid system. When are these contests going to happen? There's 4 major contests for VHF. We just had the January VHF contest. The next one coming up is June, and those 2 are sponsored by the ARRL. And then in July, there's the CQ Worldwide contest. That one's a little unique. It's 6 meters and 2 meters only, which I actually kind of like because I don't, those are my favorite bands. So just focusing on that is good. And then the September contest is coming up in the fall. I think everybody sees June as the big VHF contest. The weather's nicer. You can go out and operate portable, and then you get that sporadic E thing going on 6 meters and sometimes 2 meters. So here's my buddy Stu, W0STU. He's operating this was actually the January VHF contest. Depending on the weather patterns, we can actually have okay weather in January. So he was up on Mount Herman, which is just west of here, doing a bit operating. Take a look at that picture. The ARRL keeps using this same picture. Like right now, it's on the front of the ARRL operating manual. So it's kind of funny to see my buddy Stu showing up there.
That's okay, Bob. I've been using your picture for my presentations also. So
All right. And then you can see what he's got for a radio here is I think that's the FT857. It's that mobile sized VHF rig, and he's got this Arrow antenna. It's cross Yagis. It's got 3 elements on 2 meters and more elements on 70 centimeters. And I think he's got like a 6-meter dipole strung up in the trees or maybe on a pole. So pretty basic VHF station that he drug up there. This is my operating station a few years ago. Wow, 2006 on Mount Evans. I drove the SUV up there, and I've got this mast that attaches to the hitch. So I've got the 2-inch hitch receiver thing, right? And that's just a TV mast with a small Yagi on 6 meters and a little bit bigger Yagi on 2 meters. Had a blast up there on Mount Evans. That's a 14,000 foot mountain, kind of in the middle of the state. One of the things that we have in the VHF contests is rovers. And the idea is rover stations can move from grid to grid, and they get to work all the same stations again. So as soon as they move to a new grid, it's kind of like they get to start over in their log, so to speak. They can work everybody again, and it really helps activate lots of grids. Like here in Colorado, the eastern part of the state is pretty flat. Lots of ranch land, lots of cows, not too many ham radio operators out there, and then even fewer that operate VHF contests. So we typically have rovers that go out there. This is Eric's station, KR0VER. So he's definitely a rover, right? Look at that call sign. Here's his SUV set up with, I think that's probably the 2-meter Yagi on top. I think that loop there is a 6-meter loop. And then this other Yagi is probably 1.25 meters, 222 megahertz. And then that's probably 70 centimeters. And he's got a couple of loop Yagis there for the even higher bands. And these guys, I don't know if you've ever looked at rover stations, but they get pretty creative on how they stack up all these antennas on their vehicle and get down the highway and operate. So here was his map. He kind of carefully set out a plan, and you can see what he does. They tend to stay close to the grid corners. So up here, he can sort of circle around that area and be in 4 different grids pretty easily. Then he zipped down here, and he did the same thing at this grid corner, and then came down. And this looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's probably going to operate from 8 grids on that particular contest. And so this really does help us for some of these grids that have lots of cows and no ham radio operators. Okay, so that's a bit about VHF contests. And so let's switch to summits on the air. And I've been spending a bunch of time on SOTA in the last 5 years. There's really 2 ways to participate. You can go out and be an activator and go on top of a summit and contact everybody you can, or you can be a chaser. You can be sitting at home at your station working the guys on the summits. It's a worldwide program started in the UK, and they were pretty smart about how they set it up so that it could be adapted and expanded to all these different countries in the world. And so it came to the US, I think, around 2005 or something like that, and it's really been growing. There's a points system and an award system. Pretty much the the points for a summit is based on elevation, and so the higher peaks get more points. And there's all kinds of certificates you can get both as an activator and as a chaser. In Colorado, for example, there are over 1,800 summits, and there is a list. Like, you can't just randomly choose a summit. Someone's gone through and figured out based on the prominence, how far the summit sticks up. They went through and cataloged all the summits for any particular area, and so a list is created, and then a couple other requirements. When you go up there, your equipment has to be carried. No minimum distance, but mainly the idea is don't be attached to a vehicle. So if there's a road, you can drive to the top of a summit, but then you like take your backpack out of the back of the vehicle, walk some distance away to make it a portable kind of station, and then also no fossil fuel generators, portable power only, which really ends up meaning it's battery powered for the most part. Some people take solar panels or something like that, but even if they have solar panels, they're probably going to be battery powered, right? Or going to have a battery in the system. So yeah, there's lots more on the program here on the SOTA website. You can drill into that, but the basic idea is have fun activating mountains, and then the chasers are trying to see who all they can contact on mountains. Now, I should say, this presentation is really about VHF. Most SOTA activity is actually on HF. Probably 90% of it is HF, and so that means you can work SOTA summits from anywhere in the world when these guys are activating. My interest is more VHF, and particularly I'm really hooked on this notion of when you get it on top of a summit, all of a sudden the VHF range really improves, right? Height above average terrain is really important, and that's the thing that I find interesting. So I pretty much stay exclusively on VHF. So then you go, well, where are these summits? And if your geography is very good, you could probably kind of predict what this looks like. And so you've got the eastern mountain ranges, right, from Maine down through as far down as Alabama and Georgia. And then on the west coast, you've got the Pacific Range, the Sierras, through Washington, Oregon, California. And then you got the Rockies that kind of go through Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. But then if you look closer, there's kind of summits almost everywhere. Kansas is left out. It's just too flat. Nebraska only there's one dot there. I think Nebraska has a handful. I don't know why it didn't show on the map. Maybe 5 or 6 summits. And then we can come over here to Ohio. It's actually quite a number of summits in Ohio. As you probably expect, most of them are down south. And so let's zoom in on that. So here's the peaks in Ohio, and so there's a pretty good chunk down here.
Bob, the one that's closest to us is the summit of Summit County High Point, which is 1,325 feet. That's the one that's right above the A in Akron there.
Yeah, has anybody been there?
That's right near us. Yes.
I actually looked that one up. I was going to ask you if you guys knew. Summit County High Point, that's its designator. You see there's so the Ohio area would be called W8O, 8th call area, and O for Ohio, right? And then there's another designator that I don't know what NE stands for. It's probably Northeast or something. And so there's a designator for that summit. And as you said, it's 1325. And it has been activated. So here's zooming in a little closer. When I pulled this snapshot, that 16 means it had been activated 16 times. And I read the description out on the SOTA website. We've got a pretty cool system where you can, after you do an activation, you can go put comments in there and, maybe describe the access. How do you get there? Was it a difficult hike? Is there a road to the top? Whatever. And it sounds like that summit is pretty flat and broad, and part of it goes into a park. I don't remember if it's a county or a city park.
That actually is an old Girl Scout camp.
Oh, it's an old girl. Okay.
Yeah. We actually had a thing about 4 or 5 years ago to help save that camp, or keep the industrial or commercialism from buying the camp, because the Girl Scouts were up to sell it. And I think the park system has it now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, are
So,
you talking Camp Ledgewood?
No, it was at Girl Scout camp, Keith, up there off of just north of West Richfield.
I think it was called Camp Hiawatha.
Yes.
Yeah, Hiawatha, that's what it was.
Now it's the Richfield Heritage Preserve.
Yeah, our club was part of getting that to happen. We were spreading the word about it. They wanted to turn that into residential.
yeah, I bet you it's prime property.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful up there too.
There's a geocache right by that high point.
I'll have to go look for it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that so my wife and I do this SOTA thing together, and a lot of the summits are well known, and like Pikes Peak. Okay, everybody's heard of Pikes Peak, so we'll go do that. But then there's these other summits that are just a little hill out in the middle of nowhere or out in the national forest, and when once you decide to go activate it, it's kind of like, well, how do we get there? And what's around? Where are the roads? And we ended up learning a lot about different areas. It's been kind of fun from that standpoint. Okay, so how do you do a SOTA activation? Again, I'm going to do VHF here. You can do HF and VHF or both or whatever. Of course, if you're doing VHF, I talked about how single sideband is such a better propagation, better modulation mode, but of course everybody has 2 meters FM, so it's going to be the most popular way to go in terms of trying to find stations to contact. And so the simplest thing to do is I just call it's take along a 2 meter handheld on a hike. And so here I'm on the top of not a huge mountain. It's just for Colorado standards, it's only 10,000 some feet. And I just took my HT along and made a bunch of contacts from up there. And that's a simple way to get started. I definitely recommend upgrading the rubber duck antenna. They're really not that very, very good of radiators. There's this, a half wave works really well. And so this is the MFJ half wave. It collapses down pretty small, and then in a half, it's about a meter long. And then recently I discovered this, there's a dual band version of that, not from MFJ. It's, but you can find it on Amazon. It's the RH770, comes with the different connector types, and it's only $17 delivered. And I've used these a bunch and did some comparisons. They actually work quite well. Now the disclaimer or the warning on this is, this is a pretty long antenna, so you want to be careful how much strain you put on the antenna connector of VHT. I mean, you could probably snap the antenna connector right off if you weren't careful. So that's one thing to be aware of. Another popular antenna is the roll-up J-pole. It's about 54 inches long, made out of either TV twin lead, or some of them are made out of ladder line. You can hang it in a tree if you've got trees around, or a lot of times the SOTA guys use a fishing pole. They'll use like a telescopic, they call them crappie poles, right? Maybe 15 feet long, something like that. You can hang something like this on that. It's basically a half wave radiator with a quarter wave matching section. They're pretty handy. In fact, we're talking about SOTA right now, but this is kind of a handy antenna to have in your toolkit, right? People use them they'll use them at home if they don't have any kind of antenna set up. They'll like hang this in a window, and then it becomes kind of their base antenna connected to an HT or whatever radio they have. And they do come in dual band versions. Some of them are set up for both 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So then kind of the next step up is go ahead and bring a small 2 meter Yagi antenna along. So here's another summit I'm on. This is from Arrow Antenna, and I really like their stuff. This is a 3-element Yagi. These elements are made out of arrow shafts, as in bow and arrow, and they're nicely threaded, and they all come apart and compact down pretty nicely. Stick it in my backpack, and obviously I'm just using the HT there connected to that antenna. Still a pretty simple station, right? Doesn't take a lot of equipment. And then the thing I've been working on lately is I started to notice that with the HT, a lot of times I'm hearing the other station really well, and but they're not hearing me. And I'm scratching my head going, how come they're not hearing me? Well, because I'm running 5 watts and they're running like 50. They're sitting at home with a 50 watt mobile, or they're in a car somewhere. So I thought, okay, I can balance that out. And so I added a small transceiver like this that runs like 30 watts, gives me a little more punch. Again, thinking about that non-line of sight region, that once you get over the horizon, you just want a little more, you want all the signal you can get. Of course, you should always improve the antenna first, right? Because the antenna will help you on transmit and receive. But there is some, it really helped to increase transmit power. It's helped me a bunch. So I'm typically running 30 or so watts. I don't run much more than that. And then here's the battery I use. It's a Bioenno. I've tried a bunch of different batteries, and there's all kinds of things you can use, but this kind of settled in on these. They're lithium iron phosphate. And this one's pretty small physically. It's 4.5 amp hours. And here's some specs. It weighs about a pound. So pretty lightweight for that much capacity. And the thing about the Bioenno is, lithium batteries can be kind of touchy in terms of how you charge them and all that. And what they've done is they've built the charging smarts and some protection circuitry inside the battery pack. So it makes it pretty, I don't want to say foolproof, but maybe resilient. It's not too finicky to use.
Did that come with the Anderson J poles attached to it?
Yeah, the power poles.
Oh, that is sweet.
Yeah, and they've got all different sizes. I just bought a 20 amp hour, which is a lot bigger, but man, it's got a lot of capacity. It also had the power poles attached. Okay, a couple of stories around activation. So down in northern New Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere, there's this mountain called Capulin Mountain. And guess what? It's a dormant volcano, right? Look at that cone shape. It's got kind of like this crater thing in there. And you see the road going up, it kind of spirals around, and you end up right here is the parking lot. And then of course the actual summit is at the back there, and there's a trail that you can hike up. And so I had been to this summit before, and I said, I really want to activate this. Well, the problem is it's like 150 miles away from anything. And it is a national monument down there, Capulin Volcano National Monument. And so think of northern New Mexico. You're out in the middle of the desert. Colorado Springs is like the nearest major city going north, but it's about 150 miles. And then Albuquerque and Santa Fe are about 150 to the west. And I thought, how the heck am I ever going to work anybody on VHF? And so I put the word out to some of the VHF enthusiasts that have Sirius stations, right? And a bunch of them got on the air. Turned out I had a great day. My best, so here's where it is. It's up here in the northeast corner. My best DX that day was to N7KA down just outside of Albuquerque, about 190 or 184 miles. And when I first started working him, we were on single sideband. I could hear him fine. I was running 5 watts. And the FT817 to the 3-element Yagi, he couldn't hear me. So as we often do on VHF, we flipped over to CW. And so just barely made that contact on CW. So it's a good example of where CW, the signal gets through. And I did end up working a bunch of guys up in Colorado too, and some in Santa Fe. I had a pretty good day of it. It was quite a few people on the air, but I pretty much had to schedule that. Now, about 2 weeks ago, well, it was the January VHF contest. We decided, let's go find a summit that's easy to get to. And so it turns out this is a 3 Mile mountain. It's about 10,000 feet vertical, but there's a road that's less than a mile away from it. So we parked on the road, and my wife and I hiked up. And because it was an easy hike, I put the FT 991 in, which is a little big for backpacking, right? But I stuck it in there with that's actually that 20 amp hour battery. I drug it up there, and so I was working guys in the VHF contest, and things are good. I was working mostly people maybe 50 miles away, and then all of a sudden I get this call, and he's calling me. N0LL is way the heck over in Kansas, and he's calling me. I'm sitting there going, I know Larry. I've worked him before from better locations. I didn't think we'd work from this mountain at all. And all of a sudden he's calling me, and on single sideband, and he was stronger than some of these stations that were sitting up in Denver. I was really amazed. And that turned out to be my best SOTA VHF contact so far, 372 miles into Kansas. So I was pretty happy with that. Okay, yeah, here's my picture on Mount Snuffles. This was a few years ago in the Colorado 14er event. In August, we've got this event where people go up. Really, you can go to any mountaintop, but it originally started by activating the 14,000 foot mountains. And so this is on Mount Snuffles over on the western part of the state. I've got an arrow antenna here, 3 elements on 2 meters, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements on 70 centimeters. Looks like I just have the HT at the moment there. Beautiful picture. Joyce, my wife, took that for me. Here's another one from the 14er event. This is Steve, WG0AT. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's one of his goats partially in the picture. He's taken pack goats with him, and he's made a bunch of really cool videos and stuff. He's kind of a legend in the Summits on the Air community. But he's also got 3 elements on 2 meters, operating from, I'm not sure what mountain that was. This is my wife Joyce, K0JJW, and I operating from a smaller mountain. You can see it's pretty wintry out there, and I'm holding the antenna, and she's running the radio and telling me, point it this way. No, point it that way. Back to thinking about VHF contests. Here's one thing I've started doing is combining the contest plus SOTA. That's actually what I did on that 3 Mile mountain thing. It was a SOTA activation, but I also did it during a VHF contest, and tends to bring out more operators. So here I'm on that Mount Herman, the same one that Stu was on, 9,063 feet. Operating there. I had the FT817 with me, so I could run FM and single sideband. I made about 17 QSOs. Nothing too exciting. Best DX that day was up to Wyoming. There was a station on just across the state line. I was about 140 miles away. So kind of a fun thing to do to combine the SOTA plus the VHF contesting together. Here's David, KI6YMZ on Mount Elbert. This is back to the 14er event. Again, he's got the 3-element Yagi as well. Pretty popular antenna for mountain topping. There's Joyce on Humboldt Peak. That's a 14er in the southern part of the state. And then, yeah, we always have all these great pictures of, blue sky and sunshine and all that. It's not always warm and sunny. This is Steve again with his friend Guy, N7UN, and this was during the 14er event. They went up one of the mountains, and it was just fogged in. It was raining. It was cold. It was miserable. And they kind of got up there and said, let's see how many contacts we can make on 2 meters, and then we'll just get the heck out of here. That's Steve's, one of Steve's goat. It's Rooster. Rooster has since departed the earth, but he was one of Steve's hiking buddies for many, many years. Okay, so that's it. Kind of in summary, a little bit about VHF, UHF, some hiking, some SOTA contesting, playing around the mountains, all kinds of stuff. So any questions or comments?
I have a couple questions, Bob. This is Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
A couple things, if you'd comment. One, if the weather changes and a storm rolls in, is lightning an issue? And the other thing I'd like you to comment is, I think it's called hypoxia. People, when they get up higher and they're not used to it, whether that can cause some physical distress as well.
Yeah, excellent questions. So the biggest danger in Colorado when you're hiking in the summer is lightning. If you look at like these maps that show lightning strikes, Florida and Colorado are states that have lots of lightning strikes. And of course, when you get above tree line, you're very much exposed. So it's very dangerous. The rule of thumb is to try and get up the mountain in the morning and get off the summit by noon, and so you can get below tree line, shortly after noon, because usually the storms build in the afternoon. But it's definitely a safety concern. And it's probably the number one topic everybody's talking about when they plan their hike. Is like, okay, what's the weather going to be, and can we get off the mountain in time if there's storms moving in? And then on hypoxia, it's kind of funny because go back. I remember on this mountain with Joyce, your thinking process degrades quite a bit at 14,000 feet. And varies with different people, right? It's not necessarily how physically fit you are, but it does vary with the individual. And when you get up that high, there's not as much oxygen. And so I remember on this peak, I realized she was having trouble remembering her call sign. She kept scrambling her own call sign, and it's like, okay, honey, we're getting down off the mountain. This is it's not good. And then some of the more severe symptoms, you can get headaches, and they can get very severe and even debilitating if you're not careful. People often get upset stomach and that sort of thing. So it is something you have to be aware of and pay attention to.
I've never been on a 14,000-foot mountain, but I do have a pilot's license, and you're required by the FAA to have oxygen if you're 10,000 feet or above in a plane. And obviously you don't want your mental abilities degrading while you're flying a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole altitude thing's kind of interesting. Denver, the Mile High City, it's around 5,280 feet. So some people will come to Denver and experience the noticeable effects from the altitude. But then as you go up higher, it just progressively gets worse. Like for me personally, at 10,000 feet, I don't really notice anything. Of course, I live at 7,500, so that helps. And when we travel back to the Midwest, it'll only take like let's say a week being gone, and when we come back, we can tell we're not used to the elevation. It takes us maybe 2 weeks to get used to it again. It's not dramatic, but it's noticeable, like when we're out hiking.
Bob, this is Anthony. Frank and I don't know if Jim's in the group today or not. We're using your book and Stu's book for our general class. We just finished up a tech class with it also, and I didn't realize I didn't put you and your name in the book together until I thought about it. But I always knew Stu's name. So when you showed the picture of Stu, then that reminded me to look at the book, and I realized you were the author on that. So thank you for the work on that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, they're really Stu's books. The technician one, he did pretty well. He did all the writing, and I critiqued it for him. And then on the general class, I actually played a little bit bigger role, but it's still really his book. And those books came from we've been teaching a bunch of started with technician classes, and for a while we used the Gordon West book, and we weren't real happy with that. And the ARL book I think is good, but it's much more detailed. You sort of have to study it a lot to sort of tease out the questions. And one day we're sitting there and we're talking about how we really want a blend. You got to teach the exam, but we want to teach concepts too, so people actually learn something. And Stu says, well, maybe I'll just write a book. And that's how it all got started. I've been pretty happy with teaching with his books, though.
Bob, that was an excellent presentation. I want to thank you. Anthony Luscre actually had just invited me to it moments before you started, so it was very good. Just one comment. Out in Colorado, where you are, there's another antenna that's very popular on the vehicles and the trails of Colorado, and I happen to be the inventor of it. It's called Compactenna. There are lots of them out there.
So, okay, what